This is the third episode of The Good Life Consultant. This is a podcast that I'm starting here from my office at home. My name is Blake if you're new here. If you're old here, then my name is still Blake, in fact. Grab a cup of coffee. I've got a good one for you. We're going to be discussing something that I hear all the time from my clients is a challenge, and I'm going to give you the framework that I've used to find some breakthrough. So, specifically, what we're talking about is having a business that can flex around our real life. The kinds of folks that I talk to, that I deal with on a daily basis, are usually in a season of life where they have priorities outside of just growing and scaling their business. And so when they look up content on YouTube like this, or listen to podcasts, or even read books, they can read a business book and it will tell them, do X, Y, and Z thing and grow and scale your business. And then things get interesting because they try to follow those plans and strategies, but inevitably life happens. They make this, they read a book that says, hey, you've got to set up a time block in an ideal week. And then all of a sudden they do that and they have a couple of good days, but then their kid gets sick. Their time block is ruined. Or other forms of life happen as they're trying to be parents. I find myself distracted right now. If you're like, Blake, why are you pausing so much? It's because I'm getting warnings that my stream isn't good. So if I lose you, just reach out through the internet right now. Just extend a hand. You're like, Blake, I'm watching this 3 weeks later. Is this going to help? Yes, it is, because time is a flat circle. Anyway, back to the topic. I have people that I'll talk to and they'll say, well, I've tried to do this, this, and this. It's just so hard. And they feel guilty. They feel overwhelmed and they feel frustrated because they want to grow their business. They want to enjoy their business, but they don't really because they're constantly getting these interruptions or these setbacks. But they wouldn't trade that because their life with their family or I say family, they may or may not have young kids like me. A lot of them do. But their life, their purpose outside of their work is important to them. And so they're not going to make that trade. And that is where this conversation comes in. When I left my job, I had a full-time gig, and I left my job in 2022. I jumped into some consulting and some coaching. That's a whole other story. I ended up doing things that weren't what I was planning to do, and it was kind of wild because my wife was pregnant at the time. We already had a 3-year-old, and it was kind of an intense moment because I had to figure out, okay, how can I set up our life so that obviously our needs can get met, but beyond that, I can be the type of dad that I want to be, and I can grow the business that I want to grow. Ideally speaking, I would like to not just like my life outside of work, I want to love what I do inside of work, and I want to enjoy the people that I get to work with. And so that was my challenge. And so without realizing it, I started to develop a model that allowed me to, from the jump, work what are essentially part-time hours, but allowed me to earn and work in a pretty ideal way. I quickly outpaced my income that I was earning at my full-time gig, and I was doing it having way more fun. Every thing I did, to be honest, I really love to do. And if you're watching this, if you're a consultant, if you're a coach like me, maybe you want that and you feel like that's hard to attain right now. I am by no means a guru when it comes to this. I don't have a $100 million super awesome empire or something like that. But what I do have is a framework that's worked for me, and that also is a channel that I'm taking. It's a journey that I'm currently on, and I'm using it to continue to grow in the direction that I want to grow. Okay? So if you are in that state, if you've already got a business, doing your own thing, being a consultant, doing coaching, having services, but you need to have some more flexibility, you're right. You're right. I meant to say you're in the right spot, but you know what? You're right for being in this spot right here, right now. Cheers to that. All right. So before I share this 4-part framework, I want to cover a few principles. There's a few what I would call governing principles behind this, and also a few performance standards. In other words, what are the standards that I'm aiming for with this? And so the first principle is to work from alignment, not toward it. What I've noticed is that when I say I'm going to have alignment with my business later, I just need to do X, Y, and Z thing, I end up making it harder to ever get into alignment. What do I mean by alignment? I mean that there is congruence between my identity, my value system, my strengths, my desires, my vision, basically me. There's congruence between me and the work that I'm doing and the stuff that I'm building. Okay, so what I'm not trying to say is I only do stuff that I want to do all the time, or I never do anything that's hard or challenging or anything like that. Don't mistake alignment for ease, but really, for me, to have a business that's truly flexible, that can flex around my real life, I have found it to be way easier when I am in alignment. So I actually start with clarity about what do I want, who am I, what's my vision, what's my strengths, my skill sets. Having a little clarity about that first allows me to then discover, okay, what business model will work for me, or who will I want to work with based on this? Where do I have congruence? Because you're going to get a bunch of different strategies for here's the best way to do this, here's the best way to do that. Like even this video, it's like, here's a way to have a flexible business, right? But you've got to know you. So work from alignment, not toward it. You're not trying to build and work and hopefully you feel better and more in alignment later. That actually makes it take way longer and it makes it harder to ever get there. But when you start from a place of alignment, it actually makes everything else that we're going to do easier. Here's a little bonus thing, by the way. I wasn't expecting to talk about this, but this is a podcast and I don't have a guest. It's just me. So whatever. When you try to build your own business, when you're trying to develop your business so that it meets all your needs and your ambitions and flexes around your family perfectly, you're going to hit challenges. What makes starting from alignment so useful is that you will never, ever encounter a challenge in your business that does not serve the development of the identity that you long to live out. I'll say it again. When you start from a place of alignment, you'll never encounter a challenge in your business that does not, by overcoming it or by working through it, allow you to step into the identity and live out the identity that you're longing for in your life. And in this way, your business can become your strongest, greatest personal development tool. So every challenge that I face in my business, because I've started from alignment, serves my vision for me in my life, even though the challenge itself sucks. Like it never feels great. So that's just a freebie. Wasn't planning on talking about it. Maybe I should do a whole episode on that, but there it is. Second two principles I'll cover quickly. One is related to starting from alignment is the inverse growth principle. And this is just sort of this backwards nature, this upside down nature that I've found from this framework. For example, freedom is gained through constraints. So starting from alignment is, in a way, a constraint. I'm going to find my business, my little niche, my model, whatever I'm going to do, through the lens or through the constraint of me and my identity. That's a constraint. Profit can grow when you do less, when you subtract, right? And this leads me actually to the third principle, which is connected to this idea of an inverse growth principle, which is that I prioritize simplicity over complexity. So when in doubt, what is the simpler route? What is the simpler version of what we're doing? The more we can simplify our process, our offer, our business, the more we can flex, the easier it is to improvise when we need to. We can create lighter, leaner, more repeatable systems in our business. Dan Sullivan has this quote that goes, more complexity equals less execution. And less execution means less results. Your actions are creating your results. So the more complex your business is, if you've got 15 different offers, if you're spread across a bunch of different types of clients, your execution is going to go down, which means your results will be lesser. Your energy is going to go down, right? So simplicity over complexity. Okay. Those are some governing principles just to have in your mind as I go through this. Last and final preamble are performance standards. So what is this flexible framework or model of business trying to produce? For me, there's three buckets. One is the money bucket. So a business's job is to produce a profit. So this model, for me, it should be producing at least 2 times what it costs in terms of time, money, and energy. Okay, so that's the actual math of that might be different for, you could do that math in a number of different ways. But for me, I need to be able to have a high margin business. And I think about that in terms of money first and then energy and time as well. I want to be getting and have room to get a lot more income than what I have now. I don't want to optimize my business for staying at the same level. Hey, if everything goes right, I can sustain my income. I always want to be creating a lot more margin and generating progressively more income for obvious reasons. But, I've got kids, priorities, dreams, and desires, right? And inflation is the thing, right? The second bucket is the amount of time required. So specifically the amount of time for fulfillment or delivery. I was talking with somebody, and I have this onboarding form for my Good Life Accelerator coaching program that I have. In the onboarding form, it says, how many hours do you work per week? And then how many of those hours are spent in delivery or fulfillment of your offers? And I recently had a client who said, I'm working 40 hours a week, 40 hours are in fulfillment. And he mentioned to me, he's like, I realized as I put that down, I don't actually have a business. I really just have a bunch of jobs. And he's exactly right. If all your time is in fulfillment, you can't actually grow the business and you won't be able to be responsive or flexible. And so for me, my performance standard for this model is less than 50% fulfillment. So what that means for me is I have a 30-hour a week threshold for my business. I want to be able to run and work for 30 hours. I like what I do, so I actually like working that time. I'm not looking to work less right now, but I don't want more than 15 of those hours to be in fulfillment. In other words, I want to have plenty of time to think, to strategize, to review, to be creative, to do stuff like what I'm doing right now. This is fun for me. It's a creative outlet. So less than 50% fulfillment. And then lastly, it's what am I spending my time doing overall in the business. And so this last performance threshold is 80% in genius mode. So 80% of the time or more, I am doing things that bring me energy, doing things that are within my strengths area, doing things that I love to do. Okay? So we've got profit, limited fulfillment, and lots of time in energizing activities that I love to do. That's what I'm looking for from this model. Okay, Blake, get to it. If you haven't clicked through and skipped to this part of the video, and you actually heard all of that, you're going to be in a much better place to understand this 4-part framework. If you did skip ahead, respect. I get it. No hard feelings. Okay, so I call this framework Flex. I wrote it down on a note card for you. If you're listening at home, there's a really expensive high budget graphic that's flashing across. I've got some pyrotechnics in the background to emphasize it in some unique camera angles that would make Wes Anderson envious. You can tell what kind of person I am because the first director I could think of was Wes Anderson. So that tells you everything you need to know about me. Okay, Flex, there it is. That's a note card. So let's go through it. There's a 4-part framework. Acronym Flex is there to remind you this is about creating a flexible business that can flex with family, personal life, whatever. So we're going to start with F, which stands for favorite client. Favorite client. You have probably heard, if you're in the coaching, consulting space, the riches are in the niches. You've heard that, right? What does that mean? Well, it means that the more specific you are, the more narrow your focus is on a quote unquote target market or client avatar, whatever marketing term you've heard, the easier it is to actually build a lot of wealth because you can target that person and you can speak more directly to them. So and I've made this mistake a lot of times, but a good example is when I mentioned I left my job, and one of my first offers was like, hey, here's coaching for people. I think I said like leaders. It's like, great. Leaders could mean a ton of different things. But if I said, hey, here's coaching for billionaire owners of NBA teams, that's a pretty narrow niche. There's only 32. So why didn't I pick that niche? Now that I say that out loud, I really would just need a couple of clients that I'd have it made, probably get courtside seats. Okay, well, introducing a new podcast, The Good Life Billionaire MBA Owner, episode 1. Just kidding. So when I talk to people about narrowing or their market or choosing their niche, I almost always hear the same thing, and I wonder if this has been your experience. They realize that it would be powerful and helpful for them to have a target, a more narrow target market or client avatar. And they know that it would help their marketing be easier, it would help their fulfillment be easier, therefore they could attract more people, more easily sell those people because they would have testimonials from that market, and it would be easier to fulfill. In other words, you can make more money in less time. And yet they don't pick a niche for a lot of different reasons. What niche should I pick? What if I feel trapped by this niche that I've picked? I don't know. I've served a bunch of different kinds of clients. I'm not really sure which one to pick. I don't want to be held down or stuck in this niche, on and on and on. Well, this first letter is the best way that I've found to get the benefits of picking a niche without the downsides. And that is to simply review your clients and pick a few favorites. And from those favorites, pick one favorite. This was a multi-stage process for me. It looked like reviewing my client list, picking out my top, I think it was like 8 or 10 clients. And then I just had deep dive conversations with them. I did some custom deep dive coaching work with them. And then from that deeper work emerged a client that I said, you know what? She pretty much embodies everything that I would want to replicate. Anytime I'm on a call with her, I feel more energized afterwards. I don't feel drained. When I coach her to do something or make a suggestion, she does it. She gets results. When she gets results, she tells me. She's not super needy. She is good at what she does. She's talented. She's not super scarce thinking. She knows she has to make an investment, but she expects to get a high return and then goes and gets one. And so I picked one client. Her name's Danielle. She knows this is the case because I've told her. I was like, you're my niche. And what I did was whenever I'm making anything or doing anything, that's kind of my filter. And by picking one client to build off of, it makes everything else easier downstream in my business. Again, this probably could be a whole episode in itself. Maybe I should. I'm realizing now this is going to be a doozy long episode going through these. So perhaps if there's one particular one that you want me to expand on or give more examples about or help you with, leave a comment or send me a message. Okay. So picking a favorite client, that is F. Once you do that, things begin to get easier because you just build around that one person and their story. And this leads me to my next point, but where your stories intersect. Okay, let's go to L of the Flex framework. Once you have one client to build around, you need a leveraged offer. A leveraged offer. So leverage simply means the difference between your input and your output. So if I have low input but high output, that is high leverage. If I have high input and low output, that's negative or leverage. And if I have equal input and output, that's low leverage. Okay? So when I say a leveraged offer, I'm going to make this even easier to understand. What I mean, if you're a coach or a consultant, the best way to create leverage with your offering is with a story, to have it be a story-driven offer, specifically where your story and your favorite client's story match. Okay? You don't have to do this, by the way. This is just a way that I found to make a business super simple and hit those performance standards and be very flexible. Okay? Seth Godin says, marketing is no longer about the stuff that you make, but about the stories you tell. So the question that I asked myself once I had identified my favorite client was, well, what is the story that I want to live? And where does my story and Danielle's story align? And you're hearing it right now. I've titled this podcast Good Life Consultant. It took a lot of, riffing and trying different things, but I realized, what we share is we're both in the consulting, coaching, working primarily solopreneur type of space. And we both want to make more money. We both want to do the things that are our favorite things to do in our business. But we also want to be able to limit the amount of hours we have so that we can enjoy what I consider to be the good old days with our kids. She's got kids. She homeschools her kids. She has vision for life with her kids. She doesn't want to miss out on these days, these moments for the sake of scaling her business. But she doesn't want to put her calling and her creativity on hold just because she's got kids. I can relate to that. I love that story. I feel like that's my story in a way. When you make your offer a story-driven offer, it becomes very powerful and high leverage, and here is why. A lot of times people will make an offer that's very simple, and this can be effective, but it is really deliverable focused. So you pay me, I give you thing. Then you have thing. Maybe if you need thing more often, you pay me retainer to do thing, but maybe you don't. I don't know why I went to caveman speak, but it's sort of a not a caveman way to think about it. No shade if that's where you're at. But if you want higher leverage, you make an offer that is the story that your favorite client is on. So the thing about Danielle is when she first came to me, she wanted coaching related to marketing. I've done so many different things. I needed a really better marketing system. Like, what's a good system for marketing? And I heard that and I dug deeper and I got to understand, well, what's the story? What's the big why? What are your goals? All of those things. And I understood the story arc that she was really on. And marketing and having a system to do that well was just one small part of it. And in fact, it wasn't even the part, as we dug into it, that she should be focusing on right now in order to get closer to where she wants to go. And so what I offered her was, hey, let's go on this journey together. This is my offer, is that we can create a good life consulting business that can get you these performance standards that you have and help you create that life. That's the vision. That's what I'm selling. Right now, we're going to focus on, and what we ended up focusing on was her offer itself before the marketing, because that was the first domino that needed to fall. And by the way, it worked, and she started making more with less hours in, and got to do her favorite thing in her business as the means to do it. So, but that was sort of the micro, or here's what we'll focus on right now. But when I say you need a leveraged offer, what I mean is you need to be telling the story that your favorite client wants to live out, because then you don't need to rely or cross your fingers on retainers for deliverables. You don't need to price match your deliverables to competitors. You can tell a story and your clients will want to pay you over and over again or stay with you for a long time because they connect to that story. And they recognize that, yeah, we'll work this month on this and maybe next month on this and maybe 2 months where we don't work on anything at all, but you're still in my corner. You're the coach or you're the consultant. You're the person that I trust in this area, and you're really going on this story with me. So that's what I mean by a leveraged offer. Let me know your questions on that. E. E stands for effortless delivery. And so when I say effortless delivery, I put a little hyphen there for those that can't see another award-winning graphic that I've made here on this 3x5. What I mean is that we need our delivery to not stay at equal amounts of effort and time. We want to be progressively making our delivery easier and easier to do. Or when I say easier and easier, I mean we want our effort to go down while our client results and consistency of results improves. This is not just about, hey, how can I do the least amount of work possible? And, I made my client sign a contract and so they still have to pay me. That's not the point. This only works if their results get more consistent, if their results get better. So this is about, when we are talking about fulfillment or the delivery part of a framework for a business, this is about productizing our services. Productizing our services. Alex Hormozi has a quote. He says, "An excellent product is a form of leverage because you get more for your time." Here's how this works for me. Here's how I think about productizing my services. Again, it works best, it's easiest to do this if you have the F and the L first. So I have a favorite client. I'll keep talking about Danielle since that's the example I've been using in this episode. Favorite client, Danielle. Leveraged offer. Let's create a good life consulting business for you. And the effortless delivery starts with the first time we got into it, I had no productization of anything because I didn't know what she was about to tell me she needed or wanted. All I had was my experience, my knowledge, and my skill sets. And so she said, hey, I need better marketing system, right? And we figured out actually the first thing we need is to dial in this offer. And so we dialed it in, and that was just manual. We're on a call working it out. But I have a different mindset than what most coaches or consultants have when they're in a call with a client. Anytime I'm on the done for you or done with you level with a client, in my mind, I'm thinking, how can I do this in a way where it could really be done for anyone? Where it could be done for anyone. So as I was working through this with Danielle, I was scripting a templatized version of it. So the first thing we did was we developed our offer, and I figured out what we did, and I said, oh, we kind of just made a map, and here's the categories we had to cover. So now I have something I call the value map, and I can share it with my other clients, and I did. Then then she needed to have conversations with some of her prospects, and I walked her through, here's exactly what you need to do. And I said, oh, why don't I just make a template out of this? And so I made a conversation guide that was highly developed. I shared it with her. She got good results. And then I said, hey, where was it confusing? Where'd you go wrong? And then I updated that resource. And so now when a client comes to me and they have those issues, I can share a Loom video with them and that template. They can get results faster and easier than if we spent 2 hours digging in. A couple different forms of effortless delivery, ways in which I've helped my clients get better, faster, more consistent results while reducing my effort. One would be creating custom GPTs. And this is something that is really exciting to me at the moment, and I'm in the process of doing this more and more. But with Danielle, I realized through conversations that sometimes she would get stuck, and it wasn't a issue of logistics or execution. It was between the ears. It was a mental, emotional reaction or fear or something that was getting in her way, causing her to stay stuck. And previously, what I would always do is, hey, well, let's jump on a call. I'll do some mindset magic with you, right? And you'll feel better and you'll have an aha moment, and we go on our merry way. But I realized how kind of silly this was, because for one, she, when she's experiencing that stuckness, has to try to find time on my calendar, then wait, and then bring it up, and then move forward and execute. Wouldn't it be great if she could go through that same process as if it were me, but right in the moment she's feeling it? And so I created what I call the Mindshift GPT, which is trained up in my mindset magic processes that I would do if we were dialoguing. And I shared that with her as a test. And I said, hey, the next time you experience this, go ahead and just fire this up. She did. She said, wow, this is super helpful. This is great. This is better than talking to you. And I go, hey, a little hurt, but I guess that's great. And now I get feedback from client after client that, oh, I just use this. And I rarely do the mindset stuff even on calls now, because this GPT does it faster, better, more consistently, and it already has the context of other things that they've talked about. So that's one example. The other example is asynchronous coaching. So, and this is again a way of me thinking, how can I reduce my effort? And this is another point that's super important when it comes to flexibility that I want you to catch. Okay, so I'm going to lower my voice. Hard deadlines and firm appointments don't make for a very flexible business. What we often step into when we become consultants or coaches or service providers is we equate deadlines and firm appointments with value and security for our client. But that is not necessarily true. The more you cling to that, the less flexible your business will be. And in fact, you will always resist making your business flexible because you think you're doing wrong by your client. I realized through my own experience with coaching, I started working with this coach that charged way more than I do, but the only one-on-one stuff we did was asynchronous. And he said, you have to, if you want to ask me a question, you have to submit A, B, C, D, and D, all these different things, including financial data and all this other data, and I'll respond to you within a day or two. And I would submit it. A day or two later, I get a Loom video where he's just in 5 minutes looking at my data, looking at my question, answering it, done. I realized I was getting so much value from that because I had to do all of this thinking ahead of time. And half the time I would answer my own question just preparing the question for him. And so he actually was helping me being a great coach, even though I was never on his calendar. So this works really well with coaching, but it also works with consulting. I developed a system similar that I call spot checks that allow my clients, whenever they're in the moment, to submit a question in a structured way, and then I respond to them asynchronously. Their speed of results improved, but my flexibility went through the roof because I don't have back-to-back calls anymore or hard deadlines. If I didn't get to the spot checks today, that's fine. If my kid wakes up or if my daughter bursts in the room, which she's want to do, and I have to stop, I can stop. Effortless delivery. That's E. That's a long point. This is a long episode, y'all. If you're still listening or watching, thank you. Don't forget to smash that like button. Hey! Okay, sorry about that. We're in the home stretch. X. X stands for xylophone and X-ray. If you read any kids' books like I do, that's basically always the X letter, right? It's because nothing starts with X, neither does this. I apologize. It stands for exponential visibility. We're talking about marketing. We're talking about something that most consultants or coaches fail to do simply because they've got other more important pressing priorities. What I do, and what I would recommend you do, is you develop what my friend Nathan Barry, the CEO of Kit, formerly ConvertKit, would call a flywheel around your marketing. And in this way, your marketing becomes exponential. Your visibility becomes exponential. It's not simply, let me think of something to post. Okay, I'm going to make this post, and then maybe someone likes it, and then maybe someone, it's just, that takes a lot of energy. It's draining for at least most people. Instead, we want to build momentum, and we want to leverage assets that we're already creating with our current clients to create our new clients. I'll say that again. We want to leverage the assets and the effort that we're already investing in our current clients as the primary means for creating new clients. So here are a couple of examples of how I do this. And then I'll wrap this up. My client calls are one of my highest leverage, maybe the most highest leverage thing that I do, because they are coming to me with problems, with pain. And because I've narrowed my focus and I have a favorite client that's on a leveraged offer, that's the singular thing that I offer, even though there's different versions and levels of access and all that type of stuff, there's one primary leveraged offer. Every call becomes content. Here's what I mean. I record the call, I transcribe the call, they'll bring up pain points, whatever. I drop that transcript into ChatGPT and I say, hey, you know my offer, you know my client, here's this transcript with this call. Give me a bunch of ideas for utilizing this. That then in turn becomes a YouTube video, or it can, in that video oftentimes will be the first place that I test out an idea. Like, this is the first time I really talked about this. If you guys hate this, it won't be anything. It'll just die, right? If you like this, you say, oh, I have questions about this. Well, guess what? This become clips. I can clip this, share it on social media. This, because it's on YouTube, is this asset where people might be finding this a year from now and be like, wow, that was really insightful. I really like the part where you rambled on and used a funny voice talking about smashing the like button. That was great. And so in this way, the marketing effort happens just by doing what I love to do and what I'm best at, which is the actual client work, right? And then the better I get at those coaching calls, the better data I get, the better clips I get. Sometimes you've maybe even seen this on my social media. I'll just straight up, I use something called Opus Clip, where I just drop in the the recording of the client call, and it clips stuff for me and I post that really simply. But in this way, I can validate that the topic is relevant to my clients just in my coaching call. So I'm never guessing. Then that gets turned into some form of content, either automatically or I use creativity like I am now for this podcast. And then if that clicks, then I can turn that into a lead magnet, which thanks to AI, I can do very, very quickly, or it can do most of the heavy lifting, 80% of it by itself, which then can allow me to get new clients. And so that's when Nathan Barry talks about a flywheel, it's that you're building momentum and it creates inertia. The more I'm sharing content that's straight out of my client calls, the more likely I am to attract that type of client. The more likely I am to attract that type of client, the easier the sales process is. Again, it's less effort to make the sale. They're more likely to get results because they've already been trained up in how to think and how I work. And with each rotation, it gets easier and easier. That's one example. But that's how I think about marketing. Is I don't think in terms of, I don't have time for marketing. I think this is one fluid motion. This is one fluid motion. This episode, this framework, this is born from people asking me question after question and expressing pain with, I need more flexibility. I feel so tired. What do I do when my kids stayed up all night and I can't do this? And I wish I didn't have all this. I have to step into this client thing or have this client deadline. I told the clients I would send them these follow-ups, all of these pains, right? So my clients need this. Even if I get 0 likes and viewers on this video, it was worth developing this because this then can go straight back into my program, right? It makes, and on it goes, okay? So each letter of this Flex framework, as I'm expressing this out with y'all kind of extemporaneously, probably deserves its own episode. Let me know which one felt most relevant to you. Let me know which one you want me to expand on in a future episode. But that's where I'll leave it for today. Quick review. Our favorite clients. We pick a favorite client. We create a story that makes a leveraged offer. We don't create a story. We identify the story, truly. Align our story with our clients and create a leveraged offer. We make our delivery effort less by productizing our services. And we create exponential visibility by making our client work do the talking. Okay? Okay.